Never.
No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done.
Everyone's the hero of their own story, right? So imagine a perspective swap. What if you take a narrative and put it from the perspective of the current villain and simply make them more sympathetic towards the reader or viewer and look at it from that angle? Welcome to Perspective Swap. Griffith is the victim. Guts is the villain. Subscribe and hit that bell for all notifications. Now, if rip, for a hero, for the main character of any story, they simply have to have a goal and charge forward towards it, right? And sometimes they don't even need to have a goal, but definitely if they have a goal, it ultimately makes it a little bit more interesting and gives an end point, so to speak, from the start of the story of, hey, they're trying to achieve something. If you look at it, Griffith from Berserk ultimately starts off with the biggest goal of them all. He wants his own kingdom. He wants to be a king. He clearly came from the slums, and he's trying to make his way up. Simply put, a story of rags to riches is what Griffith was trying to accomplish. It's the means to the end that some people might question and say, oh, no, this dude is evil. But if you even go pre-Eclipse and you look at Griffith for what he is, and we'll even get to post and we'll really dive into it, but essentially pre-Eclipse Griffith was straight up something that if you was to put it on a live action AMC network, for example, like a Breaking Bad type of show, people could easily root for him and say, oh, no, he's the hero. He may play dirty. He may do things that some might deem as irredeemable, but ultimately he's striving towards his quest and his goal, and he's not stopping. He will do anything. I mean, for crying out loud, dude freaking slept with that king at one given point. Like, dude was straight up down to do whatever. Ultimately similar to an MC of a story of any kind, Naruto or anything like that. Granted, I don't think Naruto is willing to get his back blown out to become Hokage, but you understand my drift. Also, looking at it from another perspective, you would notice that, wait a minute, so Griffith, despite the fact that yes, people and his men would die on the battlefield, just like millions and millions of people throughout history, billions of people probably have died on battlefields, ultimately he fostered a family environment. The Band of the Hawks, despite the fact of ultimately what becomes of it at the end with the Eclipse, they were a family. He fostered a family environment. He brought in people that were fallen. He brought in people that he felt had some talent that they just were wasting away. Like, it's no different than, I don't know, an artist that is doing their thing on the musical level when they find somebody that's talented and be like, yo, you, I rock with you, come along. And they really had a lot of love and camaraderie for each other, so much so that when Guts first joined, they didn't want to rock with him because, no, you killed one of our own. Like, I think it was Corcus, if I'm not mistaken. He would not forgive Guts for what he did, and that was because he cared about his family, the Band of the Hawks, that ultimately was again put together by Griffith. Look at Casca, how he met her. Casca was getting ready to, they were going to violate Casca, and he ultimately rescued her from that life of just constantly being hunted down and men trying to do, just horrible things to her. He saved her from that. Guts was just a wandering savage looking for, any type of battle he could get his hands on and trying to just make a quick buck fighting freaking giants and stuff like that. Griffith came, kind of quelled his heart, and ultimately said, yo, get in line and you can rock with my family. Join my family. You could even argue that it's just a more seinen version of a Whitebeard from One Piece. Whitebeard would find people that were kind of like orphans of the sea, so to speak, and say, hey, join my crew. But you're probably listening to all this, and in the back of your mind, you're like, yo, Fenev, you've been going off for a couple minutes. That's all fine and dandy, but let's address the elephant in the room. Even if he had some heroic aspects to him, ultimately Griffith was a scumbag because one of the prophecies that was foretold was, when this man's dreams come crumbling down, you'll see the truth. I'll put the quote right around here so you see the exact quote that was said. I believe it was from Zod, if I'm not mistaken. He told Guts way back when, which also makes me question, if he never said that, would it have even come to fruition? If Griffith never got his hands on that forsaken Balit and he just charged forward with his Band of the Hawks, would he have even gone down that route? But more importantly, leading into that, one of the biggest things you could argue that kind of corrupted Griffith, or you could even say made him go into that light, was the fact that the person that he trusted the most, the one person that made him forget his dreams, basically betrayed him, backstabbed him, and walked away. Because let's keep it a buck, right? Whenever you're trying to smooth your way into a situation, whenever you're talking, whenever you're doing something, one of the things is, especially at that level, you got to think, this guy Griffith, he's using a slithering tongue to get to his ultimate goal. When he was speaking to the princess all the way back in the Golden Age arc, and Guts overheard that conversation of him saying, I don't really think of them, they're my valiant men, man and all that jazz, you know. But at the end of the day, for somebody to be my friend, I have to see them on equal footing. For starters, dog, he's trying to smooth the princess so ultimately he could get up in there and become king and, you know, take over this kingdom. He's gonna tell her anything. He'll tell her, yo, dog, I got a piranha biting my ass right now, if it meant that it was going to get him further to his goals. Guts, yo, you didn't think for a second of, hey, he was saying what needed to be said, similar to how he just sent you to go assassinate somebody on his behalf. It wasn't necessarily something that I would off rip even look at like, yo, wow, he really looks at me that way? Or dare I say it, something that Guts could have done before anything else was, how about having a conversation with him and understanding his heart and intentions? Like, dog, you gotta think about it for a second. Let's be rational and stop looking at it from the perspective that the narrative wants you to look at it as, yo, Guts is the victim, he was the good guy, whatever. At the end of the day, if Guts would have just had one conversation with Griffith and say, yo, so it's really like that, you really don't rock with us, maybe he would have been different. Maybe Griffith could have told him like, yo, dog, I had to say what I had to say. At the end of the day, literally, you're the person that made me forget my dreams. I probably would even give this shit up because I rock with you that much. Because he's even said that before. Of all the thousands of people, only you made me forget my dreams. So he, you know, at the end of the day would say a lot of different things, but ultimately where his heart lied kind of seemed like it lied with the people that he really cared about and that made him forget the dream that he would sacrifice anything and everything for. So Guts, you know, not even taking into consideration of, yo, you're overhearing something that you probably shouldn't have heard because it probably wasn't true. He's just trying to get into this girl's head so he could get to where he's trying to go. And Guts abandons him. You could argue that that was one of the biggest betrayals, if not the biggest betrayal in Griffith's life, that this guy that I just looked at as the dude that could change everything for me, the dude that could save me from myself, ultimately says, yo, could you settle for a fond farewell? And then on top of that, whips my ass, leaves me there in the snow, broken and destroyed as a man, and walks away. It's no different than somebody that gets out of a relationship with somebody that you did everything for. You was trying to build them up. You was trying to create a family with this person, and they at the last second said, oh, I overheard some shit. You don't really look at me that way. Fuck you. Whips your ass and dips out. You would be devastated. You would be left broken, which ultimately leads him to make mistake after mistake. The calculated, poised person that Griffith has always been known to be, the leader of the Band of the Hawk, for him to make mistakes, it was ultimately him being broken and crushed. And you could argue that maybe if he is, so to speak, a villain for what he did, because clearly, obviously, what he did was disgusting, messed up, and all of that jazz, but is he the one to blame for that? Or can you look at it as he was essentially victimized to a certain degree as Guts? And I don't necessarily believe in all this stuff. This is for the sake of perspective swap. So before people look at this video and say, Fenev, you're a piece of shit, blah, 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 it's for the sake of argument. I have to be my own devil's advocate. I don't have another person to talk about this shit with. Essentially, Griffith was betrayed. He thought that he was going to have his kingdom. He thought he was going to have his peoples. He probably even would have eventually given Casca what she needed, although again, going up in the ranks, he needed to do what needed to be done, but he probably wouldn't even give Casca a chance. There was just no telling what could have happened. Ultimately, Guts got scared that he saw his mans was going to be going further and further away from him and not looking at him as an equal, and instead of talking it out, instead of figuring something out, instead of saying, yo, I may not rock with what he's trying to do, but this is my family here, he ran off and betrayed him, leading him to make mistakes, leading him to be broken. And then on top of that, to add insult to injury, not only did you shit on me, not only were you responsible for breaking my spirit, which led me to make mistakes, which led him to getting tortured, his tongue ripped out, his balls ripped out, like Griffith was completely destroyed, then you have the audacity to show up in front of me years later to play my savior, taking my woman that once looked at me and worshiped me, Casca, taking my team, them wanting to follow you, and coming to be my rescuer. Fuck you. From Griffith's perspective, you could argue he's looking at it as, yo, dog, you trying to play the villain and hero at the same time, and it's all at my expense. No. And somebody at that point might make the terrible choice of making the sacrifice of what he made, because at that point he's with his back against the wall, like, you took everything from me, you destroyed me, and I did nothing but give you a family, a home, love, a position. Like, Griffith gave Guts a lot, and Guts didn't appreciate it because of one fucking conversation, and he got in his feelings. And I guess that could also be an argument to be had there of getting in your feelings sometimes can mess up a very good thing. Granted, I understand there's another perspective, which we talk about constantly regarding Guts's, at the end of the day, yo, I gotta be my own man. I can't be in his shadow. If you don't respect me, cool, bada bing, bada bang. But In a perspective swap, it showcases a different tale of Griffith was victimized, which led him to absolute madness, which turned him into the saying of, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And even though despite all of that, I like to say, you either die a hero, live long enough to see a villain, or fuck all of that shit, dog. We breaking all of that shit. We're gonna just be freaking amazing and infamous. But definitely a very interesting perspective swap, and I want your take on this whole situation. How do you feel? Do you feel like Griffith essentially, if you look at it from that angle, was essentially victimized and was initially the hero and the villain of this story from Griffith's point of view, and just in general, if it was just from a different perspective of the narrative, the villain is Guts? And definitely, if you want to see more of this perspective swap, just interesting combos, looking at stories from a different angle, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. Drop me a comment. Let me know you rock with it. Let people know where you saw it first, because somebody will come and copy this idea like they normally do from me. Perspective swap. I like it. That's all I have for this one. I'm for Networld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. Peace in. Y'all already know the golden rule. Anime and manga. This is Perspective Swap. We're looking at it from a different angle today, okay? That's just an excuse to not have to say the outro for the 100 billionth time. Have an awesome day.